He going over to Bloomberg. Bloomberg gonna run all these ads. They gonna push this, try to push this Democratic like field more into the center, because the white ghost of voters that haven't consistently voted for them need them to be in the center. Well, they got a problem because they're gonna leave the black voters from voting at all. As I've said, my position is the same as Breaking Browns, is the same as we said at the conference. Down ballot Democratic. Understand, when I say down ballot Democratic, that doesn't mean that you have to vote Democrat on every single item down ballot. Let me be clear. When I vote, I've done it in 08 and in 12 and in 16. I didn't like the ticket at the top. But down ballot, you consistently vote Democratic unless you got a candidate that you fully research and you don't like their policies. I did that with Jackie Lacey here in Los Angeles. She was the Democratic district attorney. I didn't vote for her. I just abstained from that too. What I'm saying to you today is that the Republicans don't have a lot for us. What I'm saying to you today is, for our vote, you're going to have a lot for us. I want to have this discussion today. Please go to tonetalks.org, subscribe and donate, share this video. Let's get it.
Hey, what's going on, fam? So this is another video real quick where I want to address what you just saw Antonio Moore saying in the clip that was just playing, and explain why I personally choose no black agenda, no vote over Operation Down Ballot. And the short reason why I choose what I call no black agenda, no vote over what Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, the creators of Operation Down Ballot, call it, which is Operation Down Ballot. The reason why I choose no black agenda, no vote over Operation Down Ballot is because Operation Down Ballot doesn't make sense to me. And in this video, of course, I'm going to explain why it doesn't make sense to me. And I want to just put it out here in the ether because I know, obviously, Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, even though they probably have lost a lot of supporters because of what's happened recently with the Tariq Nasheed feud or beef or whatever you want to call it, they still do have a lot of supporters and a lot of influence over a significant amount of people. And for that reason, I feel like their Operation Down Ballot and why it doesn't make sense needs to be addressed and, frankly, for lack of a better word, exposed. And before I even start to talk about that, let me put out a few disclaimers. First of all, even though I said I'm going to obviously disagree with and address why I disagree with Operation Down Ballot, this video is going to be strictly logical, meaning that I'm aware that obviously recently some prominent people have basically straight up attacked Antonio Moore in an attempt to defend Tariq Nasheed. And those people, without naming them, most of you probably should know who I'm talking about, but without naming that person, at least not yet, they use a lot of ad hominem attacks. They use a lot of things that kind of were off base and unnecessary, not needed to defend Tariq Nasheed. There's a way you can defend a dude as I have without going into people are mush mouthed and tongue tied and all of this stuff that's really just an ad hominem attack. It's not really debunking the person. It's just ad hominem insults and belittling someone because you don't like what they're saying or because you disagree with them. But if you disagree with them, break down the logic. And I'm not saying that this person didn't have any logic in their critiques of Antonio Moore, but some of the stuff in that video was unnecessary. And I'm going to make a separate video addressing exactly what I felt was unnecessary and what I agree with. But that's not this video. But that's just me explaining that I'm not out here. My video is going to be strictly logical. I'm only going to address the logic and the logical flaws of Operation Down Ballot. I'm not going to make any ad hominem attacks. So, like other people who in their attempts to defend Tariq Nasheed have done, I'm not going to do that. Secondly, this is not about defending Tariq Nasheed. Even though other people were kind of defending Tariq Nasheed, and yes, I have defended Tariq Nasheed in previous videos, even though I've also come out and made sure to point out that there are certain things that I don't agree with. I've made specific videos strictly about things that Tariq Nasheed has done or said that I don't agree with. And I've also, in other videos, even though the whole video wasn't about disagreeing with Tariq Nasheed. In several other videos, I've mentioned things that I didn't agree with or didn't like that Tariq Nasheed does, and that's to make sure that I go out of my way to point out and show that although I am still more so kind of siding with the foundational Black American Tariq Nasheed side of things, that's strictly based on the way I see things. That's not because I'm this Tariq Nasheed fanboy who agrees with everything he says and thinks he's a god and thinks he can do no wrong. Because I know that's the ad hominem. Speaking of ad hominem attacks, that's the ad hominem attack that's leveled against me. I know a lot of Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore fans will off top. First of all, thumbs down my video, and then they're gonna come with these ad hominem attacks about how Tariq's a pimp and I'm his hoe, and I'm a fanboy and I'm a dumbass and XYZ. So before you even do that, if you have it in you to be logical and fair and not be a fanboy like you want to accuse me of being, then give the video a chance. Hear the logic. This is not a attempt to attack and degrade Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore as people, or make these ad hominem attacks that have nothing to do with why I disagree with them or why I have a problem with what they've said or done. I'm strictly going to stick to logical flaws that I see in Operation Down Ballot. So I just wanted to make those two things clear. So that's the last thing I have to say for the disclaimer part. Because I know people are going to come here with the assumptions and ad hominem attacks on me. And if you do that after listening to this video, and if you cannot if you have a logical debunking of what I'm about to say in this video, I'm interested to hear it because I don't think one exists. But if you have one, I'm interested to hear it. But if you don't come with a logical debunking and all you can come with is the insults and the attacks and the I'm a Tariq Nasheed fanboy and all of this stuff, all that's going to show me and other critical thinkers, all that's going to show us is that you don't really have a logical, and excuse me for my phone going off like that, but you don't really have a logical rebuttal to what I'm saying, and all you really have is, ad hominem attacks because it's you projecting. It's you that's the fanboy. You're a fanboy of Yvette Cardell and Antonio Moore, and you're projecting that onto me by saying I'm a Tariq Nasheed fanboy. If you cannot come with a logical debunking without the insults and the ad hominem attacks, it's going to say more about you than it does about me. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the video and why I don't agree, or the meat of this video, and why I don't agree with what you saw Antonio Moore saying at the beginning of this video. Number one, first let me give you a background on my history of voting. So my first year that I could vote in a presidential election, meaning that I was old enough, was 2008. I was 20 years old, and that was the first year that I was able to, and I had just turned 20 in the middle of the year, um, that summer. And that was the first year that I was old enough to vote in a presidential election. Now, obviously, when I was 18, I was old enough to vote, but that was the first presidential election that I was old enough to vote in. Was Obama's first year. And I, like many black people, voted for Obama because I wasn't nearly as educated on the system of white supremacy as I am now. Number two, all the other black people were voting for Obama because he was supposedly, allegedly going to be the first black president. So that's number two why I did it. And we all just vote Democrat, so that's another reason why I did it. Number three, and then also my parents, and who had more influence over my thinking at that time, told me to vote for Obama. So that was another reason. So of course I went out and I voted for Obama. By 2012, I had evolved enough, not to the point where I am now, but by 2012, I had evolved enough, by the time I was 24, by the time Obama was up for re-election, to understand that Obama wasn't really looking out for black people. And like I said, I had evolved enough, but not fully. So for that reason, because I had not fully evolved to the point I am now, I still didn't understand what I understand now. So instead of voting for Obama, I voted third party. Because at that time, my understanding was I still needed to rebel against Republicans or Democrats, but I still had convinced myself that I needed to still somehow engage in the system and put in a quote unquote protest vote, um, because I felt more so that, and I still do somewhat feel, but not as strongly, that the problem was more so that we didn't have more choices than Republican and Democrat. And even at that time, I was already starting to see that they were extremely similar, even though I still kind of held on to the belief that Democrats were a little bit better, or still better than Republicans, even though now I don't feel that way. So basically, 2008, Obama; 2012, third party. By 2016, I had evolved enough to be totally on the no vote train, because by this time I had realized that Republicans and Democrats are virtually the exact same. The only difference is one is more so openly hostile to us, even though they won't admit that they're white supremacists by and large, even though some of them, especially the more extreme factions of the alt-right, will admit that they're racist. A lot of people in the alt-right still won't admit that they're racist, and even more so, the more so conservative mainstream Republicans will not admit that they're racist. So, but they're more so openly racist than the Democrats. But the Democrats are just as racist. It's just that they go more out of their way to insult black people's intelligence and pander to us, while being just as racist, or in many cases more racist than the Republicans. This goes back to what I feel about Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell not understanding white supremacy to the extent that would be sufficient, even though I don't think any black person on this planet fully understands white supremacy. There are levels to this. And the level of understanding that Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, as I see it, is not at a high enough level to be seen as figureheads or leaders of a movement. And again, that's not my words, that's Antonio Moore. He said in his video that kind of started all this that ADOS is a lineage, but it's also a movement. And obviously, Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore are the leaders of that movement. That's not up for dispute. I have many receipts that show that even Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore have said that they are the leaders of it as a movement, or the creators or co-founders. They've said either one or the other many times, or both. But anyway, I digress, because this video is not about going on about that. I just wanted to justify what I'm saying and show you that I'm not trolling or trying to use this as an attack or an ad hominem attack on Tone. But anyway, Tone and Yvette as leaders, as I said, I don't feel that their understanding of white supremacy is sufficient enough to be the people, at least not at this time, to be the people in that position. Because as I just explained my history and why I've evolved to where I am now, to how I understand that they're the exact same, Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore have both repeatedly not shown that same understanding of how the Democrats and the Republicans are virtually the same outside of some surface, superficial differences. Because on Twitter, when this whole thing started, Yvette Carnell said to Tariq Nasheed, yes, the Democrats don't help us, but they are passive. The Republicans are hostily aggressive to us. Like, basically, she was saying that Republicans are still worse than Democrats, even though they're both bad. That Democrats, yes, they're bad for us, but they just kind of sit back and don't help us, while the Republicans, they actively attack us. And Tariq Nasheed very, very effectively and accurately debunked her saying that by showing or pointing out Biden's law, and showing how our Obama's blue alert bill that basically made supposedly shooting and killing a cop a hate crime, which is a white supremacist law. And obviously Biden's law that was, pushed by Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, which has proven to be a very racist anti-black law. And he was pointing out, no, Yvette, that's inaccurate. Democrats actively attack us too. But in a lot of ways, Democrats are worse because they go out of their way to fool black people and trick black people into thinking they're their friends. So that, if anything, it's the other way around than what Yvette said. If anything, it's the Democrats who actively attack us because they go out of their way to fool us into being our friends. And for those of you who have studied some of what Neely Fuller's work and Francis Cress Welsing's work, know that deception and intentional deception is one of the number one signs of a white supremacist. So if anyone's the so-called hostile party, it would be the Democrats. But again, yes, we know the Republicans are hostile because, as I've already admitted, they're more openly racist than the Democrats. So both parties are hostile towards us. So trying to blur this line shows that again, this goes back to Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore not adequately understanding white supremacy. Because if you adequately understand white supremacy, you understand that there is virtually no difference between Republicans and Democrats. So while I understand having a problem with supporting Trump because there is no difference between these white supremacists, meaning that Trump is a white supremacist, so is pretty much everyone who's running for the Democratic nomination. They're either white supremacists or suspected white supremacists. So supporting either side should be questionable. And if you're a figurehead or a prominent figure in the movement who could potentially misrepresent the movement or mislead people about the movement, even people in the movement could be misled about the goal because of your position, which so I can kind of understand why Yvette and Tone would feel a need to check Tariq about what he said about opportunity zones, even though I've addressed there's more nuance to it than just that in other videos. But bottom line, I kind of understand a little bit, especially more recently, why they felt the need to say that, whether Tariq was coming out promoting Democrats or Trump. It doesn't matter. Either side we should not be supporting at this time. But for Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore to specifically go after Tariq using the logic that somehow supporting Republicans is worse than supporting Democrats is illogical and shows a lack of understanding of white supremacy, which is, again, one of many reasons why I have been consistently saying over my last few videos that they don't sufficiently understand white supremacy, which is also why they're pushing this illogical down ballot stuff. Because let's go further into the down ballot talk. And this is why I really want to address and expose why I think Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell are engaging in double talk. Maybe not intentionally. I'm not even trying to insinuate that they're intentionally deceiving the people. But because they don't understand white supremacy, they're confused about how to approach the voting strategy. And because they're confused, they have come out with an illogical strategy that, because it's illogical, it forces them to double talk in their attempts to explain it and define it. Let me explain what I mean. As you guys heard at the beginning of the video, Antonio Moore explained Operation Down Ballot, and both he and Yvette Carnell have given this explanation several times, which is another thing I'm probably going to address a little bit further in just a little bit. But they've both explained it several times. And as you heard, Antonio Moore said that what Democrat down ballot means is not vote Democratic down ballot, but do your research and vote for a candidate only if they have some policies that you like or some policies that you support, or if they have a black agenda. And if you didn't research them, vote Democrat no matter what. Now, again, as Tariq Nasheed pointed out, and as I secondarily pointed out, the Democrats have a history of being just as bad, if not worse, than Republicans towards black people. So to encourage black people and ADOS people to vote Democrat if you didn't do your research is foolish and dangerous. The best thing to do if you didn't do your research, given that we have the general knowledge that Republicans and Democrats are virtually the same, you should just not vote. Period. Instead of potentially voting for someone who's going to do just as much damage, if not more, to you than the Republican would have. It doesn't make sense to do this, exactly what I'm calling double talk, to where you're saying, do your research, but if you don't, vote Democrat. In order for what Tone is saying to make sense, it should be Operation Do Your Research Before You Vote, meaning research every single person that's going to appear on your ballot and make sure that they are not an anti-black candidate and that they have something that's going to benefit black people, if not a full-out black agenda. Just do your research, period. There should be no caveat of but vote Democrat if you don't do your research. And then for Antonio Moore and more so Yvette Carnell to then say that black people are lazy if they don't want to go vote, after y'all are the same people who tell us how we only have 1,700 middle black family and the bottom, 50% is worth nothing or less than $5 or whatever the exact stat is. I know I'm kind of misquoting it, but y'all know what I'm saying. So for you to sit up here and constantly harp on how black people don't have money and how that's a reason why they can't attend 2 conferences in a year, for you to then tell people that are that poor that they're lazy because they don't want to waste their gas money to go vote for potentially go vote for an anti-black candidate, no matter what's beside their name, an R or a D, does not make sense and is contradictory and hypocritical. And again, I'm not making any attacks on about no lisp or mush mouth or being retarded or none of that. I'm not doing none of that. I'm not talking about who nobody's dating or whether somebody's gay or not. I'm not saying none of that. So don't put that on me. I know other people have done that, but don't put that on me. I'm only addressing the logic. It doesn't make sense for us to understand and for us to have so many people in the movement attacking what we call the Congressional Immigrant Caucus, the Congressional Coon Caucus. We have a lot of people talking about how we understand government and how other people don't understand stuff. Yet we don't understand that it's actually the Congress who passes reparations and the president only has the right to veto it or not. And if he does veto it, if you have 2/3 majority in the Congress, they can pass it anyway. So if anything, it should be vote president. It should be Operation Top Ballot, but do your research. Meaning vote president and vote Democrat, or Democrat top ballot. Where vote Democrat if you haven't done your research on the presidential candidate, and then don't vote for the rest of the people because they are the ones who have more power to push or not push reparations, more so than the president to pass or not pass reparations. It's the Congress that holds that power. So it's more dangerous to vote for Congress people who have shown no commitment to a black agenda than it is to vote for president. So it makes no sense to tell somebody, again, along with the other things that I explained that don't make any sense, it does not make any sense to tell somebody to don't vote president, but vote for the Congress that has more power to pass reparations than the president that we're not voting for. It doesn't make sense on so many angles. The better thing is to if you don't have, again, I'm not totally disagreeing with the fact that there might not be 1 or 2 candidates out there in some on some local level that actually has a black agenda. I'm not saying that. But for the majority of us up and down the ballot, these people are anti-black, whether they're Republican or Democrat. For example, in my city, we've had 2 black mayors back to back. Both did. The first one did 2 terms. This one is still in her first term. We've had both of them have been nothing but black faces for gentrification. That is the case. Again, I've done my research on many candidates. That is the case for 95% of black people and ADOS people across the nation. That there is nobody to vote for from down to the city council level up to the president. So to promote and that these people are at many times, especially at the local level, just minority, black, sometimes ADOS faces and covers for local gentrification in majority black cities. So to encourage somebody to potentially vote for a Democrat who's going to be actively against them just for the sake of debunking some troll's opinion about you being a secret Trump supporter and trying to sabotage the election by not voting for Democrats. Instead of being concerned about some troll's opinion are not being concerned about some troll's opinion. You're concerned with that troll's opinion, and therefore encouraging black people to potentially commit political suicide by voting for an anti-black Democrat because they failed to do their research on every single candidate that's going to appear on their ballot. It's double talk. It should either be Operation Do Your Research and Top Ballot Only, or Operation Down Ballot, because again, at the end of the day, when you take out the double talk, it's what Tone says it is. Democratic down ballot. It's exactly what Tone said it is. Democratic down ballot. He's trying to do this double talk where he's saying vote Democrat down ballot, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying vote Democrat down ballot. But no, Tone, when you remove your confusing double talk, that's what it is. You're saying vote Democrat down ballot. And then we have to add your confusing double talking caveats. But if we take it out, what you're saying is exactly what came out of your mouth. Vote Democrat down ballot. But because you don't sufficiently understand white supremacy, that's why you have to add in these do your research caveats that don't make sense. And anyway, fam, that's it. That's the video. That's just me breaking down why I have a problem with what Antonio Moore has been saying and what Yvette Carnell has been pushing, because it simply doesn't make sense. And again, for the last time, this was strictly logic. I didn't attack and I didn't degrade their intelligence level, even though I said what they're saying doesn't make sense. I've heard Antonio Moore use those words many times about people who are much more prominent than him. When there's these celebrities are coming out here saying things that don't make sense, Antonio Moore is saying that. So I don't want to hear about how Antonio Moore is bigger than me or whatever, or I'm just attacking him. No, I'm just saying, or I'm just, I'm just attacking him because I'm jealous or whatever you want to say. To if you're a fanboy troll who doesn't listen to logic, I'm just doing what Antonio Moore has done to many other people. I'm looking at what doesn't make sense, and I'm saying, just like Antonio Moore has asked people to step aside, I'm not necessarily asking him to step aside, but if he continues to talk like this, maybe he should step aside, because his understanding of white supremacy is not sufficient, and it's shown by the fact that he pushes double talking operations like Operation Down Ballot, where you're saying, I'm telling you to vote Democratic down ballot, but no, that's not what I'm saying. So which one is it, Tone? We can't tell because you're adding too many caveats and double talk. Either you're telling the people to vote Democrat down ballot or you're not. And if you're not, stop saying that. You need to call it something else to remove the confusion. Just like you called out Tariq Nasheed for saying things that were putting confusion in the air about whether or not ADOS supports MAGA and Trump. Now you're putting confusion in the air about whether or not ADOS supports Democrats and whether or not it's a secret Democrat operation. You're doing the same thing you felt the need to check Tariq Nasheed about, except for you're doing it for the Democrats. But anyway, fam, that's another video. Like, share, subscribe. Peace.